And people dying in his dreams in the Stephen King classic, The Dead Zone, directed by one of our Monstervision favorites, David Cronenberg. A lot of people forget the psychological side of Stephen King. Of course, this has also got some pretty grisly death scenes in it, so a little bit of something for everybody. Although I remember it being pretty much Slimerama.
See Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs next on TNT.
See these pork rinds? What are pork rinds made of? What particular part of the pig does the rind come from? We probably don't want to think about it, do we? But see, the pork rind I've discovered is the perfect accompaniment to tonight's movie, The Dead Zone. One of the best Stephen King movies ever made, where Christopher Walken wakes up from a Rip Van Winkle coma and starts having visions that he's not too happy about. Am I the last person in America who doesn't give a flip about what he eats? I can see the expressions on your faces. I can't believe you're eating those. Well, why can't you believe it? You're watching me do it, right? Do you know what McDonald's does to your cholesterol? Yeah, I do. It makes my cholesterol feel good, you know. I'm sick of having these conversations. Whatever happened to the hippies, you know? They said, listen to your body, and your body will tell you what it needs. Well, I'm listening to my body, and my body is saying ribeye steak. Because, first of all, everybody knows I'm from Texas, right? So why would they even bring up that red meat issue? What do they really expect me to say? Oh, yeah, well, it only took us 160 years of breeding the best cattle in the world until they tasted right. Why don't we just kill all the herds and plant Brussels sprouts? I mean, I wouldn't go into an Amish community and tell them their hats were out of date or something. Anyhow, I have a lot more faith in the human body than nutrition experts do, because I've been watching this situation. I know vegetarians that look like they ought to be in a Sally Struthers infomercial, you know? And I know Jack Daniels drinking pasta packers that can run a marathon when they're 84 years old. So I've also read those articles about archaeologists that dig up people from 5,000 years ago, figure out what they were eating, and the answer is any old crapola they could get their hands on is what they were eating. It was stuff that would kill us, but it made them strong, which says to me that the body changes according to what you put in it. It figures it out. It deals with it. It's smarter than anybody trying to manipulate it. I've decided to listen to what my stomach says, and when my stomach wants a Krispy Kreme donut, I stick one in there. Y'all can just shut up about it now, okay? Thank you. All right. I'm going to pork my rinds here and watch The Dead Zone, and we'll do the drive-in totals at the first break, so just roll it. Sorry I got off on that, but we've got a nutrition facts. It's on here. Nutritional value. Are they kidding? They should just put, if you can read this, you don't want to know. It's Chief Inspector Dreyfus, isn't it? Herbert Lom plays Dr. Sam Wyzak, and I find it hard to take him seriously in a role like this because he's so identified as Inspector Clouseau's boss in the Pink Panther movies. You expect him to stick a letter opener in his eye at any moment, which is unfair because Herbert Lom is a great actor. He's been in more than 100 films going back to the 40s. He played Napoleon in War and Peace. In fact, he's one of those international actors. He appears in American films, British films, French, Italian, German, and occasionally the films of his native Czechoslovakia, or whatever they call it now. Is he Czech or Slovakian? I don't know. Never mind. Maybe it's just me, but I can't look at Herbert Lom's face without expecting him to start twitching or something. This is not that kind of movie. Okay, I said I'd do the drive-in totals. We have 8 dead bodies, 1 motor vehicle crash, 1 exploding house, 1 Nazi gun battle, scissors to the face, 3.5 stars. One of the better Stephen King adaptations. Let's do the ads and then see how it continues. Go. Herbert Charles Angelo Kuchasevich Z. Schluter Pacharu. Herbert Lom's real name. Would you like me to repeat that? Yeah. Herbert Charles Angelo Kuchasevich Z. Schluter Pacharu. You know how I can do that? No. It's written right there on a teleprompter. What do you think, I'd memorize that just for this show? Now we can see why David Cronenberg wanted to make this film. Cronenberg is, of course, the Canadian director of horror classics like The Fly and Dead Ringers and The Brood, Rabid, last year's film that nobody knew how to pronounce, Existenz. And he normally only makes films that he writes himself. But this film was adapted by Jeffrey Boehm from a Stephen King novel. So why would David Cronenberg want to make this? 2 reasons, sex and disease. That's pretty much what all his movies are about. And he explained it one time by saying he was a Cartesian. Now, you guys know what a Cartesian is? That's a person who is steeped in the theories of 17th century French philosopher René Descartes. And, of course, we all know what he said, right? Sure, yeah, we all know this. He said that all humans are composed of two substances, mind and body, and the mind is a conscious entity that understands, wills, senses, and imagines, while the body is a being extended in length, width, and breadth, but that whereas minds are indivisible, bodies are infinitely divisible, so that the mind can outlive the body, hence, I think, therefore I am. And that despite these two different natures, mind and body interact in a causal relationship so that the human mind causes motions in the body via the brain, producing sensations and emotions, while the complex functioning of the body can create in the brain sensations of color, sound, taste, smell, heat, and cold, even though there is nothing in bodies that resembles them, hence the existence of a rarefied concept of pain, a la Christopher Walken in this movie, whose mind now functions independently of his body and may in fact be feeding on said body, right? Pretty obvious when you think about it. Back after the ads. I'm not a Cartesian, of course. I'm a Briggsian. I drink, therefore I am.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and the Dead Zone after these messages.
That was Jackie Burroughs as Christopher Walken's religious fanatic mother. Now, in Canada, Jackie Burroughs is a big star, especially in the theater, a theater legend, sort of like Helen Hayes was in America. She's best known in this country for being the producer, director, writer, and star of a movie called A Winter Tan that came out in 1987. Now, I haven't seen this, but I read the following description of this movie. A middle-aged feminist embarks on a hedonistic, alcohol-sodden sexual odyssey through Mexico. I'd watch that, wouldn't you? Okay, the mail girl is coming out later, so send your emails now to joebob@turner.com or send them snail mail, care of TNT, 1010 Techwood Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30318. Or you can go to our website at tnt.turner.com/joebob and do it that way, and we'll be back in a minute. You know, I've had a few hedonistic, alcohol-sodden sexual odysseys through Mexico. That's almost a requirement of growing up in Texas. I've been all over Mexico. In fact, when I read this, I wanted to show you here. I've been coast to coast in Mexico. I've been to Matamoros, Reynosa, Nuevo Laredo, Ciudad Acuña. That's Ciudad Acuña there. That's Piedras Negras. I remember that night. Ciudad Juarez, Nogales, Mexicali, Tijuana. I've been... Well, I guess I've never been more than 2 miles from the border, but a lot of cities, you know, and cities where hedonistic sexual odysseys are available, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. I should go a little farther south next time. Well, the TNT censors did hack a few seconds out of the Deputy Dodd suicide scene there. In the original version, we do see him set those scissors up and ram them right through his face in one of the most disturbing images of the film. David Cronenberg is known for Grizzly because, after all, he was the first guy to do an exploding head on screen in his 1981 flick Scanners. And, of course, he made Crash about people having sex during car wrecks. So this is a pretty tame movie by comparison with his usual stuff. One interesting thing, that white gazebo where Christopher Walken figures out the murder, that was built especially for the movie. And after they finished the film, they offered to donate it to the town. Well, it caused a big controversy because the place they were shooting was in the historic and picturesque town of Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, where they have the famous Shaw Theater Festival every summer. And everything in the town was supposed to be historic and authentic and antique and quaint. And so the town fathers wanted to tear it down because it was not a real antique. So the producers of the movie said, fine, we'll wreck it. And then at the very last minute, they decided to keep it. And nobody knows exactly why, but it's still there. All right, commercials, and then we'll go back to the movie. And, I wanted to show you Niagara-on-the-Lake is different from Niagara Falls, in case you hadn't been there. Niagara Falls, Canada, is, you can build anything you want. Neon whorehouse, fine. You know, you guys ever been to Niagara Falls? Don't ever let people tell you that they don't have white trash in Canada. My goodness. Nice topless bars, though, actually, topless and bottomless. But Niagara Falls is here. Niagara-on-the-Lake is right up here on Lake Ontario. So Niagara-on-the-Lake, gazebo ordinances. Niagara Falls, naked gazebos. That's the difference. So don't mess with the pasties, though. They don't even have them there. You know, we should go up there.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and the Dead Zone after these messages.
And so, as Christopher Walken gets creepier and creepier, weaker and weaker, psychicer and psychicer, illustrating the Cartesian postulate of mind-body codependency. What? All right, I won't talk about that. Let's read some mail. How about it? You guys are so anti-intellectual. You don't want to talk anything. We'll do Joe Bob's Advice to the Hopeless, and you get on so quick these days, Rusty. To help us out is one of my few remaining friends in this town, Rusty the TNT Mail Girl. Glad you're so eager to do your job.
Well, let's not be maudlin.
I'm not maudlin. I'm despondent. You may have to stay with me until my mood improves. I could be a danger to myself. But,
Please, you were a danger to yourself before you got kicked out.
Hey, I left of my own accord. Don't even go into that. A couple of nice Cartesian postulates you have.
By the way, here's an email from Ryan Swallow of Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Really? Okay. Ryan, S-O-I-L-E-A-U. How did you say that?
I said Swallow.
Ryan Swallow, I think that would be. You seem to be a pretty funny guy. And you got the looks for one of those B-movie actors. You know, the kind really can't act, got that fake hick look, wearing the uncomfortable steel-toed boots that cause him to look like he dropped the soap in jail. I was just wondering if you have ever received scripts to play parts in any movies. Why did you give me this letter? And I resent the implication that all people who are staying home on a Saturday night are fat slobs who can't get a date. In actuality, we are fat, lazy slobs who never could get a date, so we married the first woman who said maybe, now have 3 ungrateful kids, and have a wife who won't cook and a dog that can't quit licking himself or figure out the concept of going outside to use the bathroom. Just needed to clear that up. Ryan, Lake Charles, Louisiana. Well, never say I don't know my audience. No matter who abandons me here in L.A., I'll always have the poor losers like myself who have nothing better to do than watch whatever movie TNT got off the clearance rack that week. And,
well, at least you get to hook up free cable up here in the hills.
well, that's true. Of course, my brain is probably getting cooked being so close to the main transmitter up here. But
Well, at least the weather's nice, right?
yeah,
Okay. Are you feeling better now?
I guess.
Good. So, call me next time they get maudlin.
Call you? I'm modeling right now. Or at least I will be when you get home. So, what's that number? What is modeling anyway? Pissed off, right? I'm modeling.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and the Dead Zone after these messages.
Christopher Walken, he was 40 years old when this movie came out, and Brooke Adams was 34. These parts in Stephen King's book were much younger, but the script was altered to fit these two great actors, and I think the chemistry between them is pretty good, and the reason might be that they had known each other since childhood. They met at the High School for the Performing Arts in New York City when Brooke Adams was in the 7th grade and Christopher Walken was a senior, and they were both working off-Broadway while they were still in their teens, and both of them have a lot of horror films for some reason. My favorite Brooke Adams film is The Unborn in 1991, one of the best mutant pregnancy flicks ever made, although she was also in the immortal Car Wash. And, of course, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. My favorite Christopher Walken movie out of the 67 or so that he's made is King of New York as the cruel upstart mob boss. And he's got that great scene in Pulp Fiction, of course, where he talks about keeping the guy's watch up his hiney. And Walken wanted to be a dancer choreographer. He did musicals all over the country. He met his wife while he was in the road company of West Side Story. In fact, his New York stage debut was in a song and dance show with Liza Minnelli. Hard to imagine today, right? The world's most intense actor singing All of Me. I don't think so. Anyway, let's do the ads and get back to the Dead Zone. You know those twitches that Christopher Walken does when he's starting to see a horrible vision? David Cronenberg took a .357 Magnum and fired blanks into the air off camera so that Walken's twitches would be realistic and painful. What an artist.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and the Dead Zone after these messages.
That rascal Martin Sheen, he's going to nuke us, isn't he? The Dead Zone was made at a time when Stephen King was kind of upset with the way his novels were treated by directors. And so Dino De Laurentiis came to him and he said, I know how to do your books, Stefan. And he made 5 Stephen King movies in a row, all financial failures. A couple of them the worst financial failures of all the 20-some-odd Stephen King pictures that have been made. This was the first one that Dino De Laurentiis made, and it's the best of the 5. Then he made Firestarter Cat's Eye, Silver Bullet, and Maximum Overdrive, the one that Stefan directed himself. The reputation of Stephen King became so bad in the early 80s that when Stand By Me came out, they didn't even advertise it as a Stephen King movie. Same thing with Misery. Even The Shawshank Redemption, they didn't really advertise as a Stephen King movie. And do you see his name in the ads for The Green Mile? No, you don't. So Big Steve is still suffering to this day from what various directors did to his material in the early 80s. And one of those various directors was Steve himself. Okay, now for the excellent conclusion of The Dead Zone, right after the commercials. Martin Sheen, better known to his mama as Ramon Estevez. All right, quick, name Martin Sheen's children. Charlie Sheen, Emilio Estevez, everybody gets those. Ramon Estevez Jr. Okay, hardest one of all. Renee Estevez, the girl. She's got a recurring part in Daddy's new show, The West Wing. And, of course, there's Martin's B-movie brother, Joe Estevez, the forgotten Estevez, All right, well, in a tackle football game between the Sheens and the Baldwins, who would win? The Sheens would win, of course. Baldwins would win tennis, country club sport, racquetball.
We'll be back with Joe Bob's Monstervision and The Dead Zone after these messages.
The pictures of Martin Sheen holding up the baby, the pictures that bring about his downfall, that kid is Ramon Estevez Jr., Martin's son. Pretty dang good movie. All right, next week here on Monstervision, we got the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie that launched one of the biggest hit shows of the 90s. Teenage girls everywhere are already programming their VCRs for this big event. And that's it for me, Joe Bob Briggs, reminding the women out there that sometimes we're not thinking about you. Live with it. Did you guys hear the one about the 3 construction workers? Steve, Bill, and Charlie are working on a high-rise. Steve falls off and is killed instantly. The ambulance takes the body away, and Charlie says, well, somebody should go and tell his wife. And Bill says, okay, I'm pretty good at that sensitive stuff. I'll do it. So 2 hours later, Bill comes back carrying a 6-pack, and Charlie says, where'd you get that? And Bill says, Steve's wife gave it to me. And Charlie says, that's unbelievable. You told the lady your husband was dead and she gave you beer? And Bill says, well, not exactly. When she answered the door, I said to her, you must be Steve's widow. And she said, no, I'm not a widow. And I said, want to bet me a 6-pack? Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that the drive-in will never die. Man comes home from the doctor and tells his wife that he has only 24 hours to live. So he asks her for sex. Naturally, she agrees, and they make love. About 6 hours later, the husband goes to his wife and says, honey, I now have only 18 hours to live. Could we please do it one more time? So, of course, the wife agrees, and they do it again. Later, as they get into bed, the man looks at his watch, and he sees that he now has only 8 hours left, and the man says, honey, please, just one more time before I die. And she says, well, of course, dear. And they make love for the 3rd time. Afterwards, the wife falls asleep, but the man is worried about his impending death, and so he tosses and turns until he's down to 4 more hours. And he taps his wife on the shoulder and says, honey, I have only 4 more hours. Do you think we could? And the wife sits up and says, listen, I have to get up in the morning. You don't.